Hi, my name is Anna Cramer, and I'm an attorney by trade, and I'm going to read the book Nelson Mandela with words and paintings by Kadir Nelson. And this book won the Coretta Scott King Award a few years ago, and it has beautiful illustrations, and it tells the story of the life of Nelson Mandela. Raleigh played barefooted on the grassy hills of Noon. He fought boys with sticks and shot birds with slingshots. The smartest Madiba child of 13, he was the only one chosen for school. His new teacher would not say his Xhosa name. She called him Nelson instead. Nelson was 9 when his father joined the ancestors in the sky. To continue his schooling, Nelson was sent miles away to live with a powerful chief. "Brace yourself, my boy." His mother held her tears and said goodbye. The chief held counsel to warriors, medicine men, farmers, and laborers. The elder ones told stories of old Africa. For centuries, Thembu, Pandu, Xhosa, and Zulu peoples lived in the mountains and valleys of South Africa. The land was bountiful, fertile, and rich. The people hunted, fished, and raised crops, living in relative peace. But they made war on European settlers who came in search of land and treasure. The settlers' weapons were stronger and breathed fire. Slowly the people were conquered. Their land was taken and spirits dimmed. South Africa belonged to Europe. The elders grew quiet, and Nelson felt sorry. Nelson grew into a young man and attended fine schools in the golden city of Johannesburg, where Africans were poor and powerless. Nelson became a lawyer and defended those who could not defend themselves. The government grew harsh and created a cruel policy. It split the people in 3: African, Indian, European. It was called apartheid. The people were set apart. European-only beaches, European-only parks, European-only theaters, and the people protested. Nelson organized rallies to fight apartheid. "We must win back Africa," he told them. "South Africa is for all South Africans." "Amandla," he shouted. "Ngwatu," they responded. Power to the people, and the people loved him. Speaking out was against the law, and Nelson was arrested and jailed. For a fortnight with 100 men, they danced and sang, calling the ancestors to join the fight for freedom. The ancestors sent their daughter Winnie to stand next to Nelson. They found love and married and welcomed children into the world. Together they stood and fought apartheid. The state vowed to put Nelson in jail, and he went underground. He wore different disguises and lived in the shadows. Empty flats, farmhouses, and bedrooms of friends became Nelson's home, while he organized more rallies and protests. The police put out a warrant for his arrest, but they could not find him. Nelson slipped across the border to visit free nations, where Black, Liberians, Ethiopians, and Moroccans freely conversed with white Europeans and brown Egyptians. They shook hands, a glimpse of freedom for life at home. Nelson returned to South Africa to cleanse his homeland of hate and discrimination. With a vision for peace and harmony, Nelson felt renewed and ready to fight for freedom. But on a drive to town, he was captured, arrested, and taken to jail. The people cried, "Free Mandela, free Mandela." Wet paint and posters covered South African walls. On a small island off the coast of the southern tip of Africa, Nelson sat in a tiny cell. Every day the world passed him by. cold mealies, thin blankets, hard labor, Nelson hammered rocks into dust and read, studied, and educated fellow prisoners. Days turned into weeks, months, and years. His children grew up. Relatives passed away. South Africa began to fall apart. There were more protests, more rallies, and violence. The people needed a leader. Nelson snuck a message to the people: I will return. As years passed, the world pressed South Africa to change. The new president agreed, and European-only signs came down. Beaches, parks, and theaters opened. Nelson's comrades were set free. Apartheid was no more. Nelson was an old man. After 27½ years, the prison gates opened and Nelson was at last set free. Thousands surrounded him, and when he hugged him, Nelson looked into the sky and smiled at the ancestors. Amandla, thank you. The sun sparkled in his gray and white hair. Nelson stood proudly with the wind at his back and spoke to a colorful sea of people. We must forget our terrible past and build a better future for South Africa. Let us continue to fight for justice and walk the last mile to freedom. Millions were given the vote and elected Nelson Mandela as their new leader. South Africa was free at last and finally at peace. The ancestors, the people the world celebrated. Amandla, Ngwathu. The end.